David is a producer and actor, man of many hats, and his latest endeavor is Not Dead, which came out this year and has just been a huge success. And now it's going to be available for churches to utilize and use. It's just a really, really neat thing, and so we're so happy to have him. David, say hello to everyone, and thank you for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Let's just get started, David. This has been a huge success. You never know when you make a project how it's going to turn out, but tell us a little bit about how it all began, how the project began. Your involvement with it, was it from the very beginning? Did someone bring you an idea? What would you like people to know about how this all came together?
Well, yeah, I mean, God's Not Dead, PureFlix obviously has been around we're in our 9th year going into it, and so we've done quite a few films over the years, and we were just to the place where we really wanted to do a theatrical, to move to that next step, so what we wanted to do first was ask pastors. We went and talked to a lot of the pastors that we'd partnered with over the years, you know, that had done the church movie nights and that had really supported PureFlix and our vision. And we asked them what it is that they felt like they wanted to see. And a lot of them overwhelmingly said a movie about what we believe, what Christians believe, and why we believe it. And so we took that idea and we started talking. One of our investors had introduced us to the Newsboys. We started a relationship with them. We loved the song "God's Not Dead." In doing our research, we ended up finding all these different cases about, you know, people being discriminated against in the college settings, and so that's kind of where all of it kind of came. You know, that's where the first ideas came from, and then we wrote a script, and from there, you know, all the pieces started to come together.
Wow, that's great. So you mentioned you guys have been doing this for a while. A lot of different productions, but this might be the first. Would you say the first big theatrical production, or statistically, has this been your biggest release? And kind of, you know, in terms of all the numbers, has this kind of been the big one for you guys so far?
It is, for sure. I mean, you know, yeah, I think we're the #1 independent movie this year.
Wow.
Yeah, it's broken so many different records and been incredible along the way. So we're just thankful and feel blessed, for sure.
Is it kind of one of those things, you know, you hear in sports all the time, you know, we always believe, but no one else believed. I've seen a lot of articles about Hollywood being shocked, surprised. Are you guys surprised at all about the reception of this, or is this something you kind of knew? We had a great thing here. We really believed in the movie, and we saw this coming. I mean, is this something that you kind of, it's like, oh, well, of course it happened like this, or how does that work for you guys?
Well, for sure. I mean, obviously, we knew that we had something special. We released the trailer in October of this last year, and it did close to 10 million shares in 1 week. And so It became the #1 shared page in the world on Facebook for the week. And so at that point, we knew that people were definitely, I guess, getting on board with this and feeling something like it was starting to become like more of a movement than the movie.
Okay.
When we opened, we had screened the movie for over 8,000 pastors. We had about 1 million likes on Facebook. 1 million people talking about it, like, you know. So we thought we'd do probably between 10 and 20 million. But of course, even with that, we were excited to see if we could turn the heads of Hollywood,
right?
And, you know, and surprise people. And sure enough, you know, when that weekend was done, that first weekend, I think we were #3 in the country, and #1 or 2 on the per screen average. And so we were only on 750 theaters screens versus the 3,000 plus that the Muppets, Divergent, everything else was on. And sure enough, Hollywood was like, first of all, what is this movie, and how did they do this? And so, yeah, it's been a fun ride.
That's great. I mean, I think you see this kind of happen occasionally with different independent films, obviously just independent, but then even faith-based films end up surprising Hollywood, and they're always so surprised, even though they're obviously, if you just look at it demographically, there's a large audience out there. It's kind of kind of interesting. But you have like some great talent in the movie. Obviously, Kevin Sorbo. Not the first time you worked with them. So you obviously brought him on, and Dean Cain. You have Superman in your film, so that's always really neat. And that's one of the things I wanted to ask you about. From the trailer, audiences might come in and expect it just to be about the debate between the student Josh and the professor, Professor Radisson, about the existence of God. But really, you track a lot of different stories throughout the film, including your characters, who's a pastor, and just about the test of faith. Talk about kind of the decision of doing that versus just focusing just on that debate of the existence of God and really expanding that out.
Yeah, I mean, I got to credit the writers, Chuck Konzelman and Carrie Solomon. They really pulled together a beautiful story about 6 different character storylines, and each storyline had its specific reason for being in there. Yes, obviously the core storyline is the student being discriminated against in a university setting, being forced to defend his faith. But then you have 6 other, characters, and mine is this pastor who feels like he's been put on a shelf. I think it's very relatable to a lot of people in life. We all feel at some point like God has forgotten us, and so he is like, he's in the mundane life of dealing with the knitting group and the choir, all the things that he doesn't want to do, and wondering why God doesn't use him, or why that God doesn't do something bigger with his life. And then, of course, at the end of the movie, he has one of the most profound. He happens to be in the exact place that God, specifically ordained him to be, to speak life into Kevin Sorbo's character at that that opportune time. And so, I think that's one of the reasons, and that's one of the success about God's Not Dead, is that people can relate to the different characters. That it's not just one storyline. And so I'm thankful that the writers really came up with that idea, and that it was executed. It worked.
Yeah, it was great, and I've been in ministry before too, and it was just so funny because throughout the film, the pastor interacts with all these other people and is inspiring them, helping them. The student at the very beginning, you have a woman who's the girlfriend of the professor, and he thinks he's not being used, but the whole film he's being used by God, and so it was just a really neat way to weave that together. One question I had is so this has been super successful, but in terms of the box office and all that, but when you are working on a project and PureFlix is working on something, what are the gauges of success for you as an artist, as a filmmaker, and how do you measure whether or not you really achieve those or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the same way in life. It's like, obviously you would love for the things that you put out there to be recognized and that they reach like the God's Not Dead, plateau and platform, but they don't, and that's the thing. But I think the lesson is in every area of our life, we do our best, right? We give it to the Lord, and then ultimately He's the one that raises it up and makes it work. And so, and to whatever extent, to whatever level, obviously, people dream of being professional athletes or something, or, playing in the NBA or playing whatever it is. And if you only get to college, or you play 4 years of high school and then that's it, it's like I think God has that design on us, and it's up to us not to question Him, but just to trust Him where He has us, and and where for us it's like every project that we put forth, we try to do it with excellence, with everything we have to it, and then we put it out there, and some go, they go further, and others, don't go as far. But again, it's like you never know how many lives you're still impacting with doing Christian films, and in the media. I mean, obviously we live in a sight and sound generation. Our culture is impacted by the media in a powerful way, and so God's called us to a very important position here, even if we don't necessarily see the fruit all the time.
Right, and that's great. I think that's a great way to think about not just a media, but just Christian ministry in general, whether it's one-on-one, whatever it is. Just like the pastor is saying, again, you may not be seeing the fruit, but I think it's just a really relatable message. When you see a lot of these, it seems like every time a film like God's Not Dead gets to the success level that we're talking about in terms of just mass appeal and that kind of thing. It really does inspire a lot more churches and individuals and groups to start thinking about media and really making that as a way to reach people, like what you guys have been doing for years now. And so as people, whether it's because they want to do feature films, some churches are doing that now, obviously we've seen that, or it's individuals doing something online for churches specifically to use in their service, or just the church making it, or whatever. What would you say to people who want to start this whole thing of media, of creating films or whatever it would be, or just art? What would you say? Hey, here's what you need to think about. Here's what you need to consider. Here's what you need to do if you want to start doing this.
Yeah, I think you just start doing it.
Yeah.
There's no more perfect time than right now. And so whether people always come as whatever it is, whether you want to be an actor, then you start taking class, you start working on that art form, director, producer, writer. Just actually pick up that pen, start writing, and then start reading books about how to do it, take classes about how to do it. Whatever it is, it's just a matter of just doing it. And that's how we started. I was an actor in my mid 20s, and I had acted in a ton of stuff before, and a ton of mainstream things, and big budget sitcoms and that kind of and shows but I had this desire to produce and to tell stories, from a more, I guess, be more creatively involved in it. And so we produced our first film. We raised $87,000 to produce a movie called The Moment After, and we didn't know what we were doing, but there's 4 of us, and we all raised money from our friends and family, and then we put our own money into it, and then we did it. And it turned out that movie ended up grossing over $2 million, and Sony picked it up a couple years ago and just repurposed it and put it back out again. All of our old films, So my point is that you just never know what you don't have to be perfect at it when you start. But I think it's just important that you start and you take that first step.
That's great. I think a lot of people here. It's kind of like the 10,000 hour kind of thing. You can't get to 10,000 hours to be an expert, but you start with hour 1. So
yeah.
I think that's really a really great message. In terms of the future, you guys obviously are working on your thing, on your next projects. Can you tell us a little bit about those, as well as obviously films and media are changing. A lot of your PureFlix offerings are on Netflix now, so there's streaming is a huge new kind of wave of doing media. Accessibility to just being able to make stuff to start doing is more readily available with equipment and stuff like that. Where do you see the church being able to enter in as things are always shifting and always growing and making it and democratizing the process? How do you see the church and Christianity really being able to fit into that? And what are you guys looking forward to in the future as well?
I don't know. I mean, it is definitely, our society, content is more readily available, and I think that's great because it opens up a lot of doors to have our films being seen all over the world, in different mediums. And so, I don't know. I think it's definitely easier to make a movie, today than it was 10, 20 years ago. That's for sure, because the costs have come down. I think it's just as hard to make a good movie as it was. Because ultimately it's about story, and it's about those characters and the relatability, and you only can do that by by doing it over and over and over again and getting better at it. And so I just encourage people to not just go out and make any movie, but really try to make a good movie and try to make a relatable movie and think about the end user. Who's gonna watch this movie? Who am I making this movie for? A lot of us want to make the movies for ourselves. As filmmakers, we think, I want to do that, but we actually don't think about who's that end user. And also, I think in our marketplace, message is key as well. Is what is the message of the movie? What do you want them to get out of it after they sit there for 90 minutes, and walk away with?
Yeah. Speaking of that, obviously now this is available in a special kind of deal for churches. So how would you hope that this kind of works for churches, their congregations, their communities? How would you like or hope to see this kind of play out, the film?
Yeah, no, well, the church movie outreach tool I think is a powerful ministry because churches can rent these movies and have these church movie nights, but they're wonderful outreach events into the community. Whereas somebody might not come to a Sunday morning service, but they will come to see a movie night. And so you have really, it's a great witnessing tool, and then it's also a community builder. It's a good youth group, whatever, fundraiser. There's so many different reasons to have church movie nights. People love them, they really do. And so we've had, so many different churches across the country rent, and you don't even have to. Obviously, we want you to start with God's Not Dead. I think you'll love God's Not Dead,
Right.
But there's also, you look in the PureFlix library and you could see so many wonderful movies that they're right up there at the caliber of God's Not Dead with different messages, for different issues that the church is going through. And so we just encourage you to go through our library and take a look at them and use this wonderful medium.
That's great. Speaking of everything you guys have produced, what are some of the next things as people that have seen God's Not Dead and loved it, people that will see it and love it, what can they look forward to from PureFlix in the next year and the next year? And do you guys have some concrete things you can tell us about?
Sure, yeah. Well, we're obviously, we believe in content on a regular basis, life-affirming, films that uplift and inspire the human spirit, but on a regular basis, instead of one every, 2, 3, 4 years. So God's Not Dead comes out, obviously it's in churches. You can rent it in your church right now. That's exciting. Then you can see it in your home in August. I think coming around, we have a movie called Redeemed that I directed, really about faithfulness in marriage. Jesus says, if you even look at a woman with lust in your heart, you committed adultery. That's not a very popular popular verse in our today's society, and is it relevant today? And so we take a look at that. It's a wonderful film starring Ted McGinley. And then we, of course, have Revelation Road 3, the third installment, The Black Rider, which is fun. I'm excited about. I love those movies. That's coming out in October.
Okay.
Have another movie called Missionaire, which is a great movie from the Chuck Norris fan household. Mike Norris' son directed that and wrote it. And then we're getting ready to shoot a movie called Believe, which will be our next big theatrical, and we're planning on hitting next Easter.
Oh, great!
That. So it's just the power of the cross and the relevancy of the cross in today's society. So lots of stuff coming from PureFlix. I encourage everybody to just check out our Facebook page and pureflix.com, and you can get all the latest information about what we're doing and what's coming out. And of course, Sermon Spice.
Yeah, there we go. Well, that sounds. I mean, you guys are super breakneck speed and production schedule. That's great. It's a lot of hard work. I think a lot of people don't always understand all the work that goes into all this, and not just the work, but just the planning, the thinking through the creative process. And so, I think that's just a great thing. The people that enjoy what you do and want to support you, are there things that you guys kind of hope people could pray for you guys for? Like, what are the things people can hope for you guys? And obviously they can support you with their money, in viewing purchasing the films. But what are your kind of your just the ongoing thing of the process of being a company that does this and being a filmmaker? What are some things people can maybe just pray for you for, or whatever? What would you like people to know about you guys?
Well, I think wisdom is the biggest thing. We need a lot of wisdom in what we do, what we choose to do, and when we choose to do it, and how to. There's so many different facets to it. PureFlix has wonderful employees. I think we have close to 30 employees that work with us on an ongoing daily basis, and so obviously this is not a one-person gig at all. It takes an army to do these. And then we have wonderful production teams that work with us as well, and producers. And so we just also we pray against dissension You know, we pray for peace, and we pray for just that we would continually love each other, and ultimately just do what the Lord has put in front of us without any dissension, and with wisdom and honesty and integrity. And so all of that's the number one thing, and we thank everybody for their support and just appreciate it.
That's wonderful. And so, again, I would recommend everyone check out God's Not Dead movie night on Sermon Spice. Check out everything on PureFlix. Again, a lot of their great movies are on places like Netflix. You can get them a lot of great places, but pureflix.com, PureFlix on Facebook, and sermonspice.com, obviously. David, thank you again so much for your time. You're more than generous to figure out this Google thing with us and to spend time with us. And thanks so much again.
God, thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it.
Oh, you're welcome. And again, everyone, check out everything on both sides, sermonspice.com and PureFlix, and we'll see you next time.